So with that, I want to welcome a very special friend, longtime friend, Mr. Joe Rignola on the Social Capital Podcast, episode 009. Joe, thank you so much for joining us here.
Rob, thanks so much for having me. It
Should be
fun.
Of course. And what's so cool, Joe, is that we're having this conversation in this podcast over the table. Not only that we probably really met, but a lot of great thoughts, a lot of great businesses, a lot of great laughs, and certainly probably some crying times have happened here. So really special to have you, Joe. Thanks again for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Joe, tell the people, who is Joe Rignola?
I mean, that's a good question. I can go through all the labels, husband, father, entrepreneur. But I think that's an evolving question and an evolving answer. And maybe that's true for most folks. We're still just trying to figure it out. Even at my age, there's still so much to figure out. But I think, I'm happy with the labels of husband, father, entrepreneur.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, Joe, for those that don't know, is one of those men that you feel so comfortable talking to. I know when I've had private conversations with Joe, he's always made me feel that I can really share anything with him. And Joe's upfront vulnerability has made it so easy. A strong man by sharing some weak moments, some strong moments as a father, certainly given me some guidance as a new father, as a husband, a homeowner, a business owner. Joe, kind of take us from where you started kind of in your interest in business and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I mean, I come from a entire family of entrepreneurs. My dad, brother, home builders, developers. So it's really all I knew. And I remember even in like 6th grade, 5th grade, 7th grade, I remember like selling candy in school. I remember, mowing lawns in the summer. And, it wasn't that I just was like, it was the neighbor's lawn. I would like go out and do estimates. And I was like 15 years old, 14 years old. And I would like go give people estimates, like written estimates, So it wasn't like just I'm doing my neighbor's lawn. I would actually go out there and look for jobs. So it's just, I guess you could say it's part of my DNA. It's when we, and I'm the last of 6 kids, when we graduated high school, all of us were basically given this choice of my dad could pay for college or he could give us money towards a business. And so for me, that wasn't even a thought. I had lots of ideas for businesses. And so he was able to fund that for all of us. And it's funny, we all chose business, all of my brothers and sisters for the most part. There was some schooling. I went, I did real estate. So I had real estate school and I did obviously health and nutrition, which turned into the online business that I have now. So there was schooling for that, but it wasn't like going to college, going away, going into debt. It was like, no, that money is going to go towards a business.
Sure.
So that was just all I've ever known.
Talk to me about Dad. I mean, for those that don't know Dad, I know Mr. Rignola is one of those most respected men really in the area. I know he's a 90-plus-year-old man who has led a family and, raised 6 beautiful children into some real community leaders that are today. Talk to me a little bit about Dad, and I would imagine Dad has such an impact on you.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, he's 90, turned 90 back in October. Again, has been a home builder, been a jazz saxophone player, and I always saw his passion for business because he would help all of us build our businesses and other people. I would see him help other people with their businesses and with advice, and always just really generous with his time and with helping people. It's actually some of my earliest memories of just him in business. I remember he had a model up on Sunrise Highway in like the 70s and 80s. It was one of the first models out there. It was this 3-bedroom ranch. It was right on Sunrise Highway. It was back when there were lights that went all the way through, and it wasn't the highway that it is now. But I remember going there almost every day and just like playing in the model and, just being there and being exposed to that. It's an interesting thought because that shaped so much of who I am today, and seeing that. And, so yeah, he's 90 now and he's still involved in the business, still playing saxophone
Wow.
at different restaurants, and he plays gigs 2 or 3 nights a week.
Sure.
He's still going strong. It's
Sign
amazing.
me up.
Yeah, it's
Sign me up
incredible.
for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for those that don't know, I'll get to it later in the episode, but you'll never guess Joe's age. Uh, Joe takes incredible care of himself, and I know that Joe comes from a great home, a loving home, a father of two incredible young boys who are some star athletes.
Yeah.
And the way I look at that, Joe, is it really begins from the top down, right? So,
Mhm.
so what dad has kind of instilled in you, what you and your wife have you know trained your children to be and to feel and how to conduct oneself, and I think that's tremendous and so commendable, especially in the world that we live in today. Um, Take me through, Joe, kind of what some of the things that you really are some of Joe's principles, some of the things that when you leave the house every day, the things that you want to instill in your children.
The first thing that came to mind as you were asking that is responsibility, right? There,
Accountability, sure.
accountability,
Sure.
responsibility, taking responsibility for the work that I do, that it's putting something good into the world, taking responsibility for mistakes, taking responsibility for my actions, and modeling that for my kids, or at least the best that I can. Being vulnerable, being open, being honest. I think vulnerability is massively underrated. I think if I could model that for my kids, talk about, mental health crisis, right? We bottle all these feelings up instead of expressing them. And I think especially as men, right, we're taught to like man up and
Rub some dirt on it.
yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
Sure.
So and there's times when that's appropriate. There's times when you do have to just shut up and
Get it done.
get it done. Um, but we also need to vent. We also need to speak about these things, because for too long, for too many generations, I think the only acceptable emotion is anger, right? Or at least that's how we've felt, right? That's generation to generation. It's like, man up, don't show emotion. That's weakness. But anger seems acceptable. So, maybe we can get to the point where it doesn't have to come to the outbursts and anger, where we can actually talk to one another, or talk to our friends, talk to a therapist, talk to, and actually start to process some of these emotions rather than bottling them up, which is just making us sick.
Yeah, I mean, I think, something I talked about also earlier on a few other episodes is that a very big mantra for me, especially going into 24 as a father, welcoming a second child, is that calm is the new cool.
Mm.
Being calm and being stoic is truly the strength. And I think, when you look at generations of men before us, I think it's very safe to say that being angry or showing frustration was their version of cool,
Mhm.
when in reality, we're smart enough now as a society to identify that being angry or mad are just ways of not being able to digest what we're dealing with.
Mhm.
So I think being calm, being composed, being rational, and being able to address a topic or problem that we have, and this is this is an epidemic. I mean, this
Yeah.
is a huge problem that men in our society are facing. And for those that don't know, like I said earlier, is that Joe is just so good at being a human and being real and sharing his highs and his lows. And um, I hope that anyone has the chance to speak with Joe and share with them their goals and their dreams, and as I have as well. And
Mhm.
it's great to be here today and to have the conversation. Like I said, over this table in which we've shared those things. So
Yeah.
that is so special. You
It
know,
does. It feels like it's full circle. So many ideas were hatched here. So many great conversations were hatched right at this table. So
with
it's
some
really
great
cool.
people,
Yeah.
with some really great people. And,
Mhm.
one of the things I'm really excited to announce, Joe, is that Coho will be hosting men's group
Mm.
once a month for this reason. I know countless men who have reached out to me over the last year and said, we have a problem.
Mhm.
We need to fix it. We believe you're the guy and we believe you have the space. So super excited to announce it, especially over this podcast with you, that Coho will be hosting a private men's group, and I would hope to see you there, Joe.
Count
I
me
think
in.
that'd be great. I
100%.
think that'd be great.
Yeah.
If you could talk to some of the guys in the future, some of the men that you'd be, speaking with, or even if you'd be a speaker yourself, what are some of the things that you feel that the men today really need to know?
It's interesting timing for this because I'm working on an event right now called Rewiring Your Brain. And one of the common themes that have come up is these having these conversations, particularly with men. I think one of the most important messages that I would try to convey is to not be afraid of those emotions, to kind of look at your past, to recognize that there may be some traumatic events that have happened in your life and to acknowledge those. And by traumatic event, it doesn't necessarily mean, this is really important, it doesn't necessarily mean like a loss or abuse or neglect. It doesn't have to be like this grand scale thing. Some people call it big T trauma versus little T trauma, or, um, you know, and big T would be those big, huge events. But the little T trauma is like tripping on the sidewalk in fifth grade and being laughed at, being, um, rejected by your crush in seventh grade, like those things, right? Where we look at it through the adult lens right now, and we're like, that was nothing, that was laughable, but it left an impression on that child, and that child is still part of us. And the longer you sort of suppress those feelings and don't acknowledge that those things happened, the more they're going to rule you. The more they're going to make those, like that child, that 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old is still inside of us, making decisions for us as an adult. And that doesn't go away until we actually acknowledge it and let it and give it some space to actually, express themselves.
Yeah. So what you're saying, in other words, is trying to dig up and identify some of the things, because I know today trauma
Mm-hmm.
is such a buzzword
Yeah.
and it can be misused.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is something that is life altering.
Mm-hmm.
It's life altering, and there's certainly levels of that. Um, when you look at an example, of being laughed at
Mm-hmm.
when you would hurt yourself as a child,
Mm-hmm.
that stays with you.
Absolutely.
When you trip and fall and somebody laughs at you that you got hurt, those types of things, especially for men, you carry.
Yeah.
So identifying the problem, identifying the trauma. Like I said, I know that word is certainly a big buzzword
Mm-hmm.
today. It's a matter of classifying if something is a rough time or if this is certainly traumatic.
I think the important distinction is that you don't necessarily have to sort of dig it up or relive it. And that's the thing that people are afraid of. They're afraid of feeling the emotions attached to it, so they suppress it. Or it's something that happened that was seemingly small, and so it was just forgotten about, or it was so large that your body and your brain forced you to sort of disconnect from it and suppress it, because it's something so painful. So you don't necessarily need to feel all the feelings and relive the trauma. And by the way, trauma isn't the experience that happened. It's your interpretation of it. It's your perception of it. And that's why it's something that is, seemingly small as tripping on a sidewalk or being picked last for kickball or whatever, can have just as big, almost as big of an impact as severe trauma like a loss or neglect or abuse. And I say that because we could look at brain scans and see that all those events affect the brain very similar ways. So, I think the important thing is just to at least have awareness that something happened that's driving you to make decisions today. Maybe you're adverse to risk. Maybe you're adverse to meeting new people, which is going to affect opportunities that you have. And all that's coming from not feeling, that 7-year-old inside of you not feeling safe.
What about today's man is different from the man 20, 30, 40 years ago?
It's a good question. I think you talked about being stoic before. I think there's maybe a fine line between being stoic and just bottling up those emotions. So I think we could talk about these things without necessarily feeling all the emotions or exploding, the emotions, blowing up inside of us or out of us. It does, there's this perception, and I think it's probably true for a large extent, is that, the older generations were just tougher.
Do you believe that?
Maybe.
Okay.
It's hard to say,
Well,
I
let's
look at my dad and my and my, and his father and who, yeah, there was there was definitely a toughness, a more ruggedness. But I'm not sure that that's necessarily a good thing, because there was that bottling up of emotions, and it did come out as anger very often.
I think right now, when you look at society as a whole, male, female, I think right now, Joe, and I'm sure you would agree with me, we're in a comfort crisis. We are in a time right now in our society where you get out of a bed, you put your slippers on, you get out of the shower, you have a heated blanket or
Mm-hmm.
heated towel, you get in your car, you have a heated steering wheel, you go through a drive-through. I think the world has become so incredibly convenient
Mm-hmm.
that it's made it very hard and inconvenient to be gritty and to be resilient.
It's interesting. It's almost like the society or the conveniences that we have made us so.
Soft.
So I was going to say soft, but maybe that's not the right word, but that's adequate. Where people like you and I will do cold plunges just to make ourselves more uncomfortable, or to go in a sauna and then do, you know what I mean? Like, or cryotherapy. Like, we're looking for things to make us more uncomfortable. It's interesting, right?
Sure. I mean, for me personally, I think it's important to become habitual, to
Mm-hmm.
find habits that are healthy, and to really be a disciple of discipline and to double down. And when those who say that today's generation is weaker than ever, guys like you and I should be licking our chops,
Yeah. Yeah.
ready to steamroll the competition, the lack of competition. And I would say that if my competitors were similar to those 20, 30, 40 years ago, it would be a different field.
Yeah. I wonder, I feel like when you reach a certain level, right? You talk about, maybe you're, let's say, the top 10% of successful entrepreneurs, 5% or whatever, 1%. Once you start to approach that, then the competition falls off anyway. And I think that's been true forever. I think because it takes so much work, it's so much work to reach a higher level, particularly in business. And it's so fucking lonely to be an entrepreneur that's why 90% of businesses fail, because entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Can it be taught? Maybe. I think most people are born with it, or like me, I was just kind of born into it, and it's all I've ever known. And so when you start to reach those higher levels of success, whatever you consider success, the competition dwindles anyway, because most people just bail.
Well, what's really nice is that when you look at society and you identify white collar, blue collar, you and I are no collar guys. We're no collar.
Yeah, I think we're all the collars.
Well, we wear all the hats.
Yeah.
We certainly wear all the hats, but
Yeah.
we try to essentially report to no one. And I
Well,
think
that's the thing. Yeah, we report to no one, for the most part.
sure.
I'm thinking about like my family. I'm like, I want to make people proud, and I want to show up for them, and, take on that responsibility, right?
That privilege.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I actually don't like no collar. I'd rather be all. I like wearing all the collars, because I think it's so important when you're in business to understand the business from the ground up. And the only way to do that is to actually experience all of it. So when I started, the business that I'm in now, or at least in the field that I'm in now, about 13, 14 years ago, I literally did everything. And so now I'm at the point where I can delegate more, but at least I understand it all. And so blue collar, white collar, gray collar, whatever you want to call it, I've worn them all. And I could always fall back on that. I could always go back to, building a website, building a landing page, writing the copy, building the office, like putting the trim up. Like I can still go back to doing all of it. And I'm really grateful for that because I understand the business better than most people because I've done it all.
Yeah, having that experience under your belt certainly gives you the peace of mind and the ability to go out really with your best foot forward,
Hmm.
knowing that really wherever you land, you're comfortable, you've been there, you've done that. And that's just one of those things that time will take care of.
Right.
And your ability to withstand the good times, the bad times. Certainly, the last 4 years, COVID post era, has really probably shaken the ground floor. I would imagine what COVID's done for you,
Hmm.
not to you,
Yeah.
what COVID's done for you has highlighted and exposed a lot of the problems that society has faced.
COVID ended up being a massive opportunity. And it's sad to say because I know a lot of people suffered. So I'm not discounting that. But again, I think it just comes with being raised by a family of entrepreneurs and just that's where it comes in. That's where that toughness has to come in. And you talked about it before where it's like, is this generation weaker? I don't know. But I know that there's opportunities in every, you know, in every scenario. I think there's the the translation of chaos is like opportunity and I forgot,
When
but
when Joe wakes up in the morning and puts his 2 feet on the ground, what's the first thing that goes through his head?
my kids and my wife. How am I going to show up for them today? Yeah. And there are some mornings where I wake up and I don't want to get out of bed. True. That's the truth. I've got a history of anxiety, depression. Luckily, I'm in a really good place now, but that's still there. So there are certain mornings where it's like, oh, I just don't want to deal with it all today. It's pretty rare. It's much more rare now than it had been. But when I wake up in the morning, it's like, how am I going to show up for my family?
Well, I can share with you that when my 2 feet hit the ground, it's the same purpose, right?
Mm.
It's the same purpose, and we stand essentially at the base of this figurative mountain, looking
Mm-hmm.
up at the mountain, saying, "What a day this is gonna be."
Mm-hmm.
But we know that we have the support of our loved ones on the back end, and I use the expression of being in business that we're constantly pushing uphill. You're pushing uphill, you're
Mm-hmm.
pushing uphill. There are times in which it's easy, times in which it's hard. Most of the times it's not easy.
Right.
And you just know that as long as you keep pushing over the hill, you're going to get to a point where you're going to be able to push it over the hill
Mm-hmm.
and life is going to be easier. So it's a matter of continuing to be resilient, gritty, and to believe that the grass is not greener on the other side,
Mm-hmm.
but it is greener where you choose to water it. And
Right.
that's something I'm very,
Yeah.
very big on. And where you spend your time, where you invest your time, whether that be with friends, families, colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. You want to align yourself to be successful, surround yourself with the right
Mm-hmm.
people, and identify really what your goal is.
Yeah.
So when you look at your goal this year, Joe, what is your goal in 24?
Well, I'm in the middle of this project right now, so I want to crush this project, and it's going amazingly well so far. Buy some more real estate, take more time off, spend more time with my family, travel more. I think being in the middle of this project right now, it's kind of like 14 hours a day, 15 hours a day of this is all I'm kind of seeing. But even within that, I still make every kid's game on the weekends. I could still take them to practice in the afternoon and come back and do some more work if I need to. So that to me is that's my goal is to just basically keep doing what I'm doing. you know,
Sure.
we talked earlier before we started recording it. When you were talking about pushing this boulder up the hill, and at some point it's going to get over that hill and it's going to get easier. And it's like, do we want it to get easier? Because we talked about, do you ever feel satisfied or content, right? Where you reach a goal and it's like right away, it's like, what's the next thing? So there's a lot of that for me. But as I've gotten older, I've started to kind of hold the trophy a little bit more. When I achieve something that I've been working towards, I do take more time now to say, I did that and enjoy that moment. And then I'll allow myself to think about something bigger or something different.
Well, when you talk about easier, what does easier mean to you?
I mean, just, maybe working 4 hours a day or 2 hours a day or working 3 days a week. Yeah. Um, the thing is, when you love being an entrepreneur, it's almost like the 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 particular business isn't as important. I love the idea of just building something from nothing. And again, my family's built houses, so that was a cool thing, to literally build something from nothing, right? You draw it on a piece of paper, and I've did it with the houses that I've built for myself, my family. It's like blank piece of paper, sketch out the design, take it to an architect, get it printed, get the permits, dig the hole, and I look at business the same way as building
Mm.
real estate. It's starting with nothing. It's an idea on the back of a napkin and
Yeah.
just taking it from there and actually building something of value, something that sustains myself and my family and has value.
Well, the drug of choice, I think we both agree, is chaos.
Yeah.
There's a level of chaos in which we need,
Need.
and we need that
Yes.
chaos. There's a very fine vibration of
Hmm.
chaos that we constantly seek.
Yeah.
And for me personally, when you talk about what's easier, it's just about having more awareness, right? More presence. Um, as our good friend Corey Muscara always talks about, and Corey's been on the pod, is that, we want to sit with our emotion, right? We want to sit with that anxiety. We want to sit alongside a day in which we're not feeling 100%.
Yeah.
But we know the tools and tactics in which, we can overcome those times, and it's not in regards to medication.
Hmm.
Could you share, Joe, with us some of the things or some of the tips or tricks in which you've really prevailed through some of those darker days?
What you just said was key because it is sitting with that and not pushing it away and not suppressing it. So, you know, going back to what we talked about before with some earlier childhood trauma and even trauma as an adult, certainly awareness. Awareness is the absolute first step. If you can have a level of awareness that something happened, if you're the kind of person that says, "I'm going to do this tomorrow or next week," or "I want to accomplish this goal," but I'm just waiting for the right time, or just waiting for the right circumstance, I'm waiting for everything to be perfect. That's you're procrastinating on achieving something that you really want. Why is that? Well, it's likely because something happened to you along the way that made you resistant to change, resistant to taking risks. That, whatever it was, or a community, conglomerate of different events, is the reason you make those decisions right now, and the reason you may procrastinate or self sabotage. And so, just awareness that something happened in your life that's causing you to make decisions that are not in your best interest today. I think that is the awareness is the first step. You have to awareness. You don't even need to necessarily know what it is, but awareness that something happened and that, you know what, maybe I am safe to make that phone call or write that email to take on that opportunity. I'm sitting in my home, I'm sitting in my office, I'm sitting in this coffee shop, and there's an opportunity. It takes a phone call or 100 phone calls or 100 emails or 100 DMs. There's nothing inherently unsafe about that other than rejection. And that's just part of the process. But when we're resistant to that, we have to just acknowledge that that's because of certain events that happened in my life that are now trapped in my brain, trapped in my body, that are causing me to not back myself, to not believe in myself or trust.
Well, I mean, you've certainly become calloused over time. Through all of the ups and downs of life from childhood to adulthood, the trials and tribulations in which you've endured have made you who you are today, sitting across from me. And I don't think you'd change a thing.
No.
You wouldn't change a thing. And that's something that I think a lot of men and just in general in our society really need to become comfortable with, that all of the good, bad, the ugly is exactly um, who is, is exactly how you are, who you are.
Mhm.
and embracing that and double
Right.
downing on that
Mhm.
and not being afraid to take that leap
Mhm.
and understanding that failure is a part of the process. Understanding that failure is
It's not only
an
part of the process,
ingredient.
it's necessary.
Correct.
It's absolutely necessary. So to be afraid of failure is just is but to be afraid of success.
Yeah, you can't have success without
Mhm.
it,
Right.
and when I know a lot of young entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast. What would be some things that you would want to instill in them? Some things that the young Joe Rignola who's 15, who's making sure that his neighbor's lawn is cut
Mhm.
and looking to you know do the things like shovel snow
Mhm.
and things of that old school entrepreneurial, young entrepreneurial stuff.
Mhm.
What are some ingredients that you put into that young man or woman?
There's no replacement for hard work. Therefore, you better love what you do because it is going to be hard no matter what. Like, I love what I do, and it's extremely hard.
And it's not for everyone.
It's certainly not for everyone. There, and I try to, tell this to my kids too when homework gets overwhelming or school gets overwhelming or whatever. Right? It's like I don't care what you're learning in school. Like you probably are never going to use pre-freaking calculus and algebra and all that. You probably will never use that. And I know my kids they will. Well, maybe one will, but right. What I'm excited for is the work ethic that they're going to have, the discipline that they're going to get out of that. I don't care what the lesson is, because the real lesson is the discipline that you're going to gain, the habits that you're going to gain from doing something hard when you don't want to do it. Mike Tyson said discipline is doing something that you hate and doing it like you love it. That's the lesson.
It's so true.
It's not the math.
Well, I think that if that's the case, we have to address then what's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow?
I think that's individual. For me, it's time with my family and, going on vacation and going on trips and traveling and going or just going hiking on a Sunday afternoon. That.
Yeah, and getting there by climbing the mountain, right, and getting on the other side, and just looking back down at your day and calling it a W,
Mhm.
and say, "I crushed today.
Yeah.
Let's do it
I
tomorrow."
don't think there are a few things that feel better than going to bed at night saying I fucking crushed today.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct.
That's amazing.
And that day you might have crushed it, but it's just called Tuesday, and you got to do the same thing on Wednesday.
No, but I think acknowledging it is super important. Again, it's come with age for me. It's just like I want to lay down and feel really good about the day and soak that in and acknowledge that because then I think it perpetuates more of that. So if you just go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, I think, potentially someone might get burnt out, you know?
Well, sure. I mean, listen, when you reach the mountaintop, you certainly need to enjoy it
Yeah.
and smell the
Yeah.
roses. There's no
Yeah.
question about it. I am from the mindset of racking up small wins and just keeping your head down
Yeah.
and being consistent and
Mhm.
owning the fact that as long as I keep doing what I'm doing, I believe in myself. Not too long ago, I was asked, what would I say to my 15 or 16-year-old self? What would I say? And my response was, just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep your head down. Keep trugging along. You have the principles to be successful from your parents, mom and dad. Wouldn't be who I am without them.
Mhm.
Really, the backbone of my principles, my morals, my overall character, my demeanor, and really wouldn't be who I am without them.
Mhm.
So great, great, great foundation is key.
Mhm.
And I know that's what you and your wife are instilling in your children. And, that's something that as a man, as a father, we need to make sure that the crop that's coming through is better than us,
Mhm.
and failure is certainly a part of that. And, hopefully some success is a part of that.
Mhm.
But there's no doubt that it's a cocktail of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and that smelling the roses, that getting to the mountaintop, and it's just that mountaintop could be, checking something off the to-do list for the day. Particularly if it's something you've kind of been putting off. You get a little dopamine hit. Like I literally make a list of the things that I need to do, and it's sort of this running list, and I put a box next to it, like I physically draw a box, and then like filling in the box and crossing that off the list. I get a little dopamine hit from that. I think that's so important. The acknowledgement part is so important. You asked me before, like, what advice would I give to the entrepreneurs? It's like, take a moment and feel that dopamine hit, because that's the motivation that's going to get you onto the next thing on that list, and then the next thing on the list, and so on and so on. How do you, it's like, do
How
I
do you
get up
eat an
every
elephant?
morning and look at the mountain? No, I looked at what the next 5 steps or the next
Right.
3 steps I need to take. It's like, it's all the same. We're still climbing the mountain, but if you look at, a lot of times you look at the mountain, it's discouraging, or it's daunting, it's overwhelming. But you're just going to take the next step, just the next step.
Well, the big question is, how do you eat an elephant, right? And it's one
One
bite
bite
at a
at a time.
time, one bite at a time. And I know for me, there are a lot of times where I look up and I say, "This is going to suck,"
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's enjoying the ride. It's
Yeah.
hopefully finding a team that you don't mind being in the trenches with
Mm-hmm.
and in the weeds with, and establishing a team is huge.
Yeah.
As you grow as an entrepreneur, you're certainly looking for people to kind of get on your bus,
Mm-hmm.
right? John Gordon's Energy Bus, huge fan of John,
Yeah.
and love the concept of when building a team to get to that mountaintop, you need the people that you really vibe with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your vibe attracts your tribe,
Right.
and getting the ones that believe in your mission and that believe in you. I mean, what an honor that is,
Mm-hmm.
because as you bet on yourself, they also have to bet on you too, as you're going to be the captain to lead them through
The
through the
storm.
gray area, correct,
Yeah.
through the storm.
Absolutely. And personally, it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do is is assemble a team and delegate. Like I said, I started out literally doing everything on my own, which I'm grateful for. But you can't scale that way. And so I started to build a team, it's hard to let go of those tasks. It's hard to delegate. And I think what it comes down to is it's hard to ask for help. I think so many people have trouble asking for help, and again, that's related to some sort of childhood trauma, because it's asking for help is a sign of weakness. It's like, I've got to do everything myself. That's why I always heard that from my dad. I just got to do everything myself, and it's cool. I'm grateful for that. Super grateful for that. And let's ask for help and scale and get bigger and better and help more people and all that.
Is it cool? Is it cool to do everything yourself?
I think I think yes. For me, starting out, again, it's allowed me to understand the business better than anyone else, because 99% of the people don't know how to build a website, they don't know how to code this, they don't know how to write copy that, so they have to get all that from the start. And because I was, bootstrapped it myself
Mhm.
from the start, I had to learn all those skills, from building the website to writing the copy to writing the email list and managing all of that, doing the books, doing, like, you know what I mean, managing everything. And so, because of that understanding, I feel like it's allowed me to be more successful. And it's also allowed me to build a team, because I know exactly what I want for a particular job, and I know exactly how to interview someone. I know exactly how to vet someone, because I understand it better than most people. And so I think it's cool when you're starting out. I think it's actually really important when you're starting out to try and do as much as you can in your business, and then start to delegate. Because how else do you figure out what you love and what you hate? Because for me, it's like, I want to delegate the things that I don't like doing as much. Because if I don't like doing it, I'm not going to be as good at it. But there's someone else out there that freaking loves it. And so that's the person. So they're going to do it better than I can, which is going to allow the business to be more successful. It's going to allow it to scale bigger.
What's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew then?
I don't know if I have an answer to that, because, again, how do you know unless you know? Like, or at the time, I didn't know what I didn't know,
Sure, you
right?
never
And so
know.
the
Yeah, of
only way to
course.
do it is to dive in and actually do it.
Might be jumping
Um,
earlier. Might be
Maybe to jump
jumping
in earlier,
earlier.
yeah. But it's, again, like, as long as I can remember, I've been in business.
Sure.
So, you know, maybe there was opportunities to ask for help earlier, maybe,
Mhm.
but you know, it just in this space of health and wellness, I've had 7 or 8 businesses. Some of them have been partnerships, some have been on my own. Um, so when there were times when I felt like a partnership was the right thing to do, I formed a partnership, and then the partner ideally is like makes up for what you're lacking. And that wasn't always the case, but ideally that's what you want. If you're not good at marketing, then partner with someone who's good at marketing. So I don't, it's almost like asking, what would you change? Or like, if you go back and ask talk to your 15-year-old self, what would you tell them? It's like, nothing. Like, just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, what comes to me is efficiency.
Hmm.
Being as efficient as possible and understanding that time is really the biggest value. Understanding that how to go from A to Z as quick as possible with the least amount of friction or resistance is key. So whether you want to look for a mentor at as a young age,
That's exactly it. What I would, yeah. A mentor at a young age would probably would have been massive. And I did. And actually, truth be told, I did have mentors. Obviously, my dad, but other business owners, I had mentors. I feel like I did always have mentors, but I would probably lean into that more. I think
yeah,
I would
Joe,
probably lean into that more.
you've certainly been a mentor to me over
I'm
the
glad.
last 5, 6 years. You've
Mhm.
certainly been somebody who I can, bounce an idea
Mhm.
off of. And I really, truly value and respect your thought process because I know you've kind of been through the ringer, the highs and
Mhm.
lows. So it's important to align yourself with the ones who have had that experience. Someone who have had nothing but nonstop success has not experienced the roadblock that they're
Exactly.
about to experience.
Mhm.
So you hopefully look to find someone who's had some bad deals and say, "Hey, look out
Mhm.
for this, look out for that."
Exactly.
I mean, I know for myself when I look back at my young self, yeah, having a mentor is huge, it's tremendous. It's the fast track, right? It's the
Mhm.
fast lane. And again, understanding that time is really the most important thing. And when you talk about a partnership, I hope that whoever anyone partners with is not taking your time.
Mhm.
If they can run that business without you and you're adding value to that,
Mhm.
that's really the business that you want to be partnered in. If you're in a business where it can't operate without you, it really becomes kind of the
It's a
Joe
job,
show.
right?
Correct.
It's a job. You've
Correct.
created a job for yourself. Absolutely.
Correct.
And I've been there, you know, um, being able to, take off, being able to not miss a game, being able to have date night with my wife, and having afternoons here and there, that's success. Obviously, the money part of it's important, necessary, but I think that's, you know, it's a package. You've got to
Well,
have all of it.
the freedom.
It was funny when you mentioned before, having that mentor, and I think we've all heard like Tony Robbins, success leaves clues, right? Failure leaves more. Failure leaves more clues. And because you're talking about, you don't want someone who's just had success because they're not going to see the roadblocks. Yeah, that's right. Success leaves clues. Failure leaves more clues.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, as well as, for me personally, you're looking for freedom. You're
Mm-hmm.
looking for complete autonomy and
Mm-hmm.
complete
Yeah.
freedom when, you are on your own and everybody has different times in which they get to that figurative mountaintop.
Mm-hmm.
So being patient, really trusting the process, hopefully aligning yourself with the right leadership, guidance, mentorship, and really having the ability to truly believe in oneself
Mm-hmm.
is ultimately everything I think you need. You need to have that big ingredient that is belief in oneself.
I think it's almost counterintuitive. You're talking about it, freedom and autonomy is to me those are probably some of the probably the two of the biggest things that I look for, that I crave, is more freedom, more autonomy. And in a way, it's maybe why I did so much of my own, because now I don't have to talk to anyone. I don't have to answer to anyone. I don't have to explain anything to anyone. I just do it myself. And to me, that felt like freedom. And now I realize that the more you can delegate and have people on your team and on your side that are as excited as you about whatever it is that you're building, then, you know, obviously you gain more freedom, but more than that, you gain camaraderie. You get to share that freedom and with other people. I think that's massive. But yeah, I think the freedom and autonomy, that's every, I don't, That I don't need it to buy a Lamborghini. I don't need, it to be successful to have stuff. I went through that in my 30s. It's like I did that. Cool. But now it's like success is freedom.
Yeah. Like I said, success is time,
Hmm.
right? Success is time, and success is free time. Free success is free time with the ones you love, the
Hmm.
ones that you care for. And ultimately, success is free time for the ones that you love.
Hmm.
And that goes back to 2 feet on the ground and working. If there's anyone you work for those. You work
Hmm.
for your family,
That's
you work
right.
for your wife, your children.
Hmm.
And you certainly look to, and you have, Joe. I mean, for me, from afar, getting to watch and witness your success over the last 5, 6 years, and be as active in the community as you have been, certainly been a model to me. And in so many ways, Joe, so many, as a father, a friend, a husband, and um, you know, if anyone has the honor or the privilege to see Joe Rignola, please do stop him.
Hmm.
Please get a conversation. Buy this man a cup of coffee. I know a great place.
By the way, it's mutual because I've seen what you built. I see how excited you get about ideas. It reminds me so much of myself, and that excites me. It gives me fuel, like to see you building things and starting from the ground up. I know you put so much blood, sweat, and tears into this place, and you have other projects. That excites me. I love seeing that. That drives me too.
Well, something that just makes it easy to connect is that I have zero problem sharing my wins with you
Hmm.
because I know you're going to take them as your own,
Yeah.
and not everyone is comfortable.
Hmm.
And you really have to be careful, especially the young guns listening.
Yeah.
Be careful who you share your wins with,
Hmm.
because those people will be the ones to identify themselves as people who are just really not happy with themselves. They're
Yeah.
not in a place in which they can handle, deal with, or cope truly with the trajectory that you're on, or the pace in which you're reaching
Hmm.
those goals. So, Joe, I mean, amazing conversations in the future. I want to thank you so much for joining the Social Capital podcast. Thought it was such a pleasure, and
Yeah.
we'll see you soon, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Robert. I really
Of
appreciate it.
course, of
It was
course.
fun.